The crunch of my tires on the gravel driveway of the farmhouse was the only sound that Saturday morning. I'd come for a surprise visit. A basket of fresh produce from the farmer's market on the passenger seat. But the scene that greeted me through the kitchen window froze the smile on my face. My daughter, Clara, was at the sink, her shoulders slumped, her hands buried in soapy water. Her usually vibrant red hair was pulled into a lank, messy ponytail. Even from a distance, I could see the dark, bruised circles under her eyes. And she was crying, a silent, hopeless weeping that spoke of utter exhaustion. Behind her, in the open-plan living room, was his family. Robert's mother, Patricia, a woman who had looked at me with thinly veiled contempt from the moment Clara introduced us. Robert's two sisters, their laughter sharp and mocking. His younger brother, his wife, and their two children, who were tearing through the room like a tornado, scattering toys and crumbs. They were all sprawled on the furniture as if they owned it. Clara, more coffee. Clara, this toast is cold. Make another batch. My daughter, my Clara, moved like a ghost among them, obeying, serving, cleaning. A maid in her own home. The rage that ignited in my chest was a cold, familiar fire. This was not the life I had envisioned when I bought this place. This was not the sanctuary I had sacrificed everything to create. 18 months earlier, Clara had finally escaped her first marriage. It wasn't a marriage. It was a slow, soul-crushing erosion. Her ex-husband never hit her, but his constant criticism, his weeks of silent treatment, and his declarations that she was useless had left her a hollow shell. When she left, he kept everything, the house, the savings, even the car. She arrived at my small apartment with 2 suitcases and a spirit in pieces. For months, she drifted through the rooms, a ghost of the vibrant woman I'd raised, convinced her chance at happiness had passed her by at 43. Watching her, I made a decision. I had $45,000 saved over 30 years as a bookkeeper, my retirement, my security. But my child's well-being was more important. I found this farmhouse on the outskirts of town. 5 acres, 3 bedrooms, and a kitchen with windows that looked out onto a wild, beautiful garden. It cost $52,000. I took out a loan for the difference. The day I handed Clara the keys, her face transformed. "It's really mine, Mom." "Yours," I said, holding her tight. "A place to start over. A place where no one can ever make you feel small again." We cried tears of hope that day. I imagined her here, peaceful, maybe starting the small catering business she'd always dreamed of. I never imagined this. 6 months after moving in, Clara met Robert at a grocery store. He was charming, attentive, the opposite of her ex. They married after a whirlwind 4-month courtship. I never trusted the speed of it, or the way his eyes darted to his mother for approval. But Clara was happy and I bit my tongue. Now, standing in the doorway of her dream home, I understood my fears had been a premonition. Patricia spotted me. "Margaret," she said, her voice sweet but her eyes like flint. "What a surprise. We didn't expect you." "It's my daughter's farmhouse," I replied, my voice dangerously calm. "I don't need an invitation." She smiled, a predator's grin. "Of course. Though technically it belongs to your daughter and my son now, doesn't it? What's his is hers, and what's hers is his." My skin crawled. She knew exactly what she was doing. "Clara," I called, not breaking eye contact with Patricia. "Come here." My daughter looked up, her eyes wide with a mixture of relief and terror. "Einbuße, Mom. I have to finish cleaning." "Let someone else do it," I said firmly. "Now." I led Clara to the old swing set under the oak tree. I knelt, my 70-year-old knees protesting, and took her chapped, swollen hands in mine. "Tell me everything," I said. The story poured out between sobs. Patricia had arrived 3 weeks ago, claiming her landlord had raised the rent. Then the sisters came, one after the other, with their own crises. Then the brother with his family. Robert had welcomed them all. "He says we owe them hospitality," Clara wept. "He says I'm being dramatic when I complain. Patricia says it's my duty. That a good wife puts the family first. Maybe I'm the one who's selfish. No, I said, my voice steel. This is not normal. This is not right. They are using you. But Robert, this house isn't Robert's, Clara. It's yours. Only your name is on the deed. I made sure of it. A flicker of understanding, of remembered power, lit in her eyes. It was the spark I needed. We walked back inside. The mess was worse. Patricia was holding court on the sofa. Clara, you're back. Good. I'd like my tea now. I stepped in front of the television and turned it off. What is the meaning of this? Patricia demanded, rising to her feet. The meaning, I said, my voice clear and carrying, is that this visit is over. You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave my daughter's property. The room erupted in protests. You can't kick us out, one sister shrieked. Robert invited us, the brother yelled. I took out my phone. Richard, I said loudly to my lawyer, could you please clarify the ownership of the farmhouse for everyone here? I put him on speakerphone. Certainly, Margaret. The property is solely in Clara's name. As the sole owner, she has the absolute right to ask anyone to leave. If they refuse, it's trespassing. The silence that followed was deafening. As the family scrambled to pack, full of muttered threats and venomous looks, Robert arrived home with his father. What's going on? He asked, bewildered by the scene. Patricia launched into a tirade, painting me as a crazed intruder. I let Clara speak. Her voice was shaky at first, then grew stronger as she listed the injustices. The stolen bed, the exhausted savings, the destroyed hands, the endless servitude. Robert looked from his mother's furious face to his wife's tear-streaked one. The conditioning of a lifetime warred with the truth in front of him. Mom, he said, his voice breaking. You should go. The betrayal on Patricia's face was absolute. You're choosing her over your own blood? I'm choosing my wife, he replied, his voice firming. I should have chosen her from the beginning. They left in a convoy of resentment. The silence they left behind was heavy but clean. Clara collapsed into Robert's arms, sobbing with relief. He held her, whispering apologies, his own tears falling. I left them to their fragile reconciliation. Later at my apartment, Clara called. He's sorry, Mom. Really sorry. We're going to try. For real this time. I'm glad, honey, I said, meaning it. But hold him to it. Hold your boundaries. Weeks passed. Clara and Robert painted walls, planted new gardens, and went to couples therapy. The farmhouse began to feel like a home again, their home. Then Patricia sent a letter. Not a text, but a handwritten note. It was full of surprising specific apologies. She acknowledged her cruelty, her manipulation. She didn't make excuses. Clara and Robert wrote back. They thanked her for the apology but stated that contact would be limited to neutral places, for short periods, and only if her behavior proved the change was real. It was a cautious truce, not a surrender. I visited the farmhouse a month later. The change was palpable. There were new flowers, fresh paint, and the air smelled of Clara's baking. Robert greeted me with a genuine warmth I hadn't seen before. Over lunch in the sun-drenched garden, Clara told me her plans for the catering business. Robert had built her a second oven. They were a team. And your mother? I asked gently. She's respecting the boundaries, Robert said. For now, we're taking it slow. It was all I could hope for. As I left, Clara hugged me on the porch. Thank you, Mom, for fighting for me when I forgot how. I will always fight for you, I whispered into her hair. Driving home, I felt a profound peace. The farmhouse was no longer just a property. It was a symbol of a lesson learned and a battle won. My daughter had found her voice, and in doing so, she had saved herself. And I had been there to remind her that she could. Continue writing the script up to 40 chapters. Here is the continuation of the story, expanding to 40 chapters. Chapter 10. The first test came 2 weeks later. Patricia called Robert, her voice trembling with manufactured distress. Your father isn't feeling well, Robert. The doctor says it's stress-related. He misses you terribly. I was at the farmhouse when the call came. Clara's knuckles turned white as she gripped the kitchen counter. Robert's face was a mask of conflict. He's using his health to manipulate you, I said quietly. Robert took a deep breath. I'll call Dad directly, Mom. If he's really unwell, we can meet at a cafe in town to talk. But we won't be coming to your apartment. The silence on the other end was venomous before Patricia hung up. Robert had passed his first test. Chapter 11. The business plan. Clara spread her notes across the new dining table. I'm calling it the Farmhouse Kitchen, she said, her eyes shining. She had menus, cost analyses, and a marketing plan sketched out. Robert looked over her shoulder, not with skepticism but with pride. I can build you a website, he offered. And I'll handle the deliveries after work. It was a tangible project, something that was wholly theirs, a fortress against the outside world they were building together. One of Robert's sisters, Melissa, showed up unannounced on a Tuesday. She stood on the porch, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. Robert's not home, Clara said, not opening the screen door. I know. I came to see you, Melissa said, her smile tight. Mom sent her famous lasagna. Thank you, Clara said, her voice steady. You can leave it on the step. The rejection was clear. Melissa left, the casserole dish abandoned on the porch like a failed siege weapon. Clara left it there until Robert came home, letting him decide what to do with it. He took it straight to the compost bin. Sitting with Clara and Robert, I laid out a spreadsheet. The $7,000 loan is almost paid off, I said. But we need to talk about the $800 you spent feeding them, Clara. And the extra utilities. I'll pay it back, Robert said immediately. Every cent. It was my family. It's my debt. He set up an automatic transfer from his account to Clara's savings that very day. It wasn't about the money. It was about accountability. The Farmhouse Kitchen landed its first client, a small bridal shower for 15 people. Clara worked for 2 days straight, a whirlwind of flour and frosting, but this was an exhaustion of passion, not servitude. The client raved about the food. That night, Clara and Robert celebrated with a bottle of champagne, their laughter echoing in a house that was finally truly theirs. Patricia shifted tactics. She began posting vague, mournful messages on social media. A mother's heart is the heaviest burden to carry, one read. When you give your all, and it's thrown back in your face. Clara showed me the posts. Should I respond? No, I said. Block her. A public performance needs an audience. Take yours away. Robert's father, Charles, came alone one afternoon. He was a quiet man, weathered and stooped. I'm not here to cause trouble, he said, his hat in his hands. I just wanted to see that you're both okay. We sat in the garden. He apologized again, not for Patricia, but for his own silence. I let it happen, he said, his voice thick. A man should protect his family, and I failed. It was the first genuine, unorchestrated contact. Robert walked him to his car, and they shared a long, quiet hug. Patricia, enraged that Charles had visited without her sanction, called Robert in a fury. How dare he go behind my back? You will not see him without me. This is exactly why we have these rules, Mother, Robert said, his voice chillingly calm. I will see whomever I choose. This conversation is over. He hung up, and for the first time he didn't look guilty. He looked free. The Farmhouse Kitchen was gaining a reputation. Clara hired a part-time high school girl to help with washing up and prep. It was a small thing, but it symbolized growth. She was becoming an employer, not an employee. Clara and Robert invited me for a family dinner. The term was now carefully defined. It meant us. The table was set for 3. We ate, we laughed, and the ghost of Patricia's criticism was nowhere to be found. The hot water heater burst, flooding the basement. It was a stressful, expensive disaster. The old Clara would have crumbled under the pressure. The new Clara called the plumber, negotiated the price, and worked with Robert to manage the cost without panic. They handled it as a team. Patricia sent a formal-looking letter, inviting them to a family reconciliation dinner at a restaurant. The tone was still one of someone granting a favor. Clara and Robert discussed it in therapy. Their response was a united no thank you. They explained that reconciliation was a process, not an event, and the conditions were not yet right. The power had firmly, irrevocably shifted. Clara started attending a local small business owners group. She found friends and mentors there. Her own community, separate from Robert's family or even from me. She was building a life that was entirely her own creation. They celebrated their first wedding anniversary. Robert gave Clara a new set of professional-grade mixing bowls. She gave him a weekend trip, just the two of them. They were learning each other anew, without the static of his family's interference. We ran into Patricia at the farmer's market. She stiffened, preparing for a scene. Clara simply smiled a polite, distant smile, said, "Hello, Patricia," and walked on, her arm linked through Robert's. The absence of drama was its own victory. The farmhouse kitchen was doing so well that Clara paid back the last of my $7,000 loan. She handed me the check with a look of immense pride. It wasn't just money. It was a symbol of her reclaimed independence. Robert had a bad week at work. Tired and vulnerable, he almost answered one of Patricia's guilt-tripping texts. He showed it to Clara instead. "Talk me out of it," he said. They talked for an hour. His weakness became their strength. Saturday mornings became their sacred time. No work, no phones, just coffee on the porch, planning their garden, or just reading in comfortable silence. They were actively building a shared life they both loved. I realized I was still visiting almost daily, my protectiveness lingering. I consciously pulled back, forcing myself to trust the new foundation they had built. It was time for me to let the sanctuary be just theirs. Patricia's father, Robert's grandfather, passed away. The funeral was a minefield of family drama. Robert attended, but he went with his father, Charles, and sat with him, not with Patricia's orchestrated grieving cluster. He paid his respects and left early, prioritizing his own peace over familial pageantry. Business was booming. Clara came to me with a proposal. She wanted to rent the small barn on the property and convert it into a proper commercial kitchen. She had the business plan and the funding figured out. She wasn't asking for permission. She was presenting a partnership. Robert started meeting his father, Charles, for lunch every other week. It was the first healthy one-on-one relationship he'd ever had with his father. Charles began to open up, sharing his own regrets and struggles. They were both healing. A large wedding order canceled at the last minute, leaving Clara with hundreds of dollars worth of perishable ingredients. It was a sharp financial blow. She didn't despair. She and Robert packaged the food and donated it to a local shelter. They turned a loss into a lesson in resilience and compassion. Months of silence and upheld boundaries finally had an effect. Patricia sent a simple, unadorned text to Robert. "I am trying to understand. I miss you." There were no demands, no manipulations. It was the first authentic communication in over a year. The barn conversion was complete. The farmhouse kitchen now had a beautiful licensed commercial space. They threw a small open house. Their friends from the business community, Charles and I, were there. It was a celebration of their joint success, in a space that was completely legally Clara's. After consulting their therapist, Robert agreed to meet Patricia for coffee, in a public place, for 1 hour. Clara did not go. He reported that it was strained and awkward but civil. Patricia asked questions about their lives and for the most part listened to the answers. It was a small, fragile step. Clara was asked to speak on a panel for women in business. Watching her command the room, speaking confidently about her journey from survival to entrepreneurship, I saw a woman I barely recognized from the broken soul I had found at the sink. Her strength was now her own. Patricia's birthday arrived. In the past, it was a command performance. This year, Robert and Clara sent a beautiful bouquet of flowers and a polite card. They did not attend the large family dinner. Patricia thanked them for the flowers via text. The world did not end. A year after the confrontation, a new normal had settled. Patricia was a distant, mostly polite figure on the periphery. Clara's business was thriving. Robert was a present, supportive partner. The farmhouse was a true home. The war was over. I sat with Clara on her porch, watching the sunset paint the fields in gold. "You know," I said, "when I bought this place, I thought I was just giving you a house." "You gave me more than that, Mom," she said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "You gave me back my life. You taught me that my peace is non-negotiable." That was the real legacy. Not the land or the house, but the unshakable knowledge of her own worth. It was the autumn equinox. Clara and Robert hosted a small harvest party. Their friends, a few of Clara's employees, Charles and I were there. Laughter and music filled the air. As I watched them slow dance under the string lights, surrounded by the life they had built together, I knew the harvest was abundant. They had reaped resilience, respect, and a love that had been tested by fire and had emerged stronger. The sanctuary was not just secure, it was flourishing. And my work was finally completely done. The first frost of the season silvered the farmhouse roof. Inside, Clara and Robert reviewed their business finances. The farmhouse kitchen was not just breaking even, it was generating a consistent profit. For the first time, they discussed investing in a retirement account. They were planning for a future they were both certain they would share. Patricia, in a move that shocked everyone, recommended the farmhouse kitchen to her book club. A flood of orders from wealthy, discerning women followed. It wasn't an apology, but it was a form of respect, an acknowledgement of Clara's skill and success on her own terms. Clara's ex-husband, Mark, reached out via email. He claimed to have reflected and wanted to meet for coffee. The old Clara would have been thrown into a tailspin of anxiety. The new Clara deleted the email without replying and blocked his address. Some bridges were better left burned. The high school girl Clara hired, Lily, showed a natural talent for baking. Clara began formally mentoring her, teaching her techniques and recipe development. She saw a reflection of her own stifled passion and was determined to nurture it in someone else. Robert's company offered him a promotion that required significant travel. The old Robert would have accepted without consulting Clara. The new Robert brought the offer home, and they discussed it for days. They ultimately decided together that the cost to their hard-won peace was too high. He declined, prioritizing their home life. I sold my city apartment and bought a small cottage a 30-minute drive from the farmhouse. It was my final declaration of independence. My life was no longer defined by proximity to my child, but by my own choices. It was a healthy separation that felt like freedom, not loss. Thanksgiving approached, the ultimate family battleground. Patricia issued a tentative, non-demanding invitation. After much discussion, Clara and Robert decided to host their own Thanksgiving for the first time. They invited Charles, me, and a few of their friends from the business group. It was joyful, relaxed, and entirely on their terms. Lily, Clara's protégée, confided that her own home life was difficult. Clara, without a second thought, offered her a part-time live-in arrangement in the farmhouse's spare room, giving her a safe haven. The sanctuary was now offering shelter to a new generation. Robert came home from a weekly lunch with Charles looking somber. "Dad told me Mom has started seeing a therapist," he shared. "She told him she's trying to understand why she pushes everyone away." It was the first sign that Patricia's change might be more than superficial. A local gourmet grocery store approached Clara, wanting to stock her signature preserves and granola. It was a massive opportunity that would require scaling up. Instead of being daunted, Clara and Robert spent the weekend creating a detailed proposal. Fear had been replaced by ambition. During one of their cautious coffee meetings, Patricia admitted to Robert, "I was jealous. You had built this beautiful life, this beautiful home, and I felt shut out. So I tried to force my way in." It was a moment of stunning, raw honesty that changed the entire dynamic. With the business thriving, Clara used her own profits to enroll in a professional pastry arts course online. It was an investment purely in her own craft, her own growth. Her identity was now firmly rooted in her abilities, not her relationships. The farmhouse kitchen catered the annual town fundraiser. Clara was praised not just for her food, but for her business acumen and community spirit. She was no longer seen as Robert's wife or Margaret's daughter, but as Clara, the local entrepreneur. Patricia, emboldened by their improved rapport, asked if she could see the farmhouse again. Clara agreed, but on a strict 2-hour time limit with Robert present. The visit was tense but civil. Patricia left without criticism, only a quiet, "You've made a lovely home." I went on a 2-week vacation with a group of fellow retirees, something I would never have done before, fearing I'd be needed. I wasn't. Clara and Robert managed perfectly. My absence proved their strength and my own ability to live for myself. Clara was asked to speak at Lily's high school career day. Watching her inspire a room full of young women, I saw the full circle of her journey, from being crushed to becoming a source of strength for others. Robert, using skills he'd honed by building Clara's business website, started a small side business helping other local entrepreneurs with their digital marketing. Their home was now a hub of 2 thriving, independent ventures, a true partnership. Charles suffered a minor heart attack. In the hospital, he gripped Robert's hand and said, "Don't make my mistakes. Don't wait until it's too late to put your wife first." The warning was heeded. Robert and Clara left the hospital more united than ever. They hosted their 2nd annual harvest party. This time, the guest list had grown. To everyone's surprise, Patricia and Charles attended, not as invaders but as invited guests. Patricia brought a pie she had baked herself. It was a little underdone, but the gesture was perfect. They stayed for an hour, mingled politely, and left without drama. 5 years after that fateful Saturday, I sat on the porch of my cottage. Clara, Robert, and Lily were in the garden, laughing as they built a new compost bin. The farmhouse was more than a sanctuary. It was a beacon. Their story wasn't a fairy tale with a clean, happily ever after. It was better. It was real. It was a story of continuous choice. To choose each other, to choose peace, to choose growth. The chapters ahead were not yet written, but for the first time, there was no fear of what they might hold. They had built a foundation that could withstand any storm. The harvest would continue, season after season,